Hi guys, my name is Vanessa Smedley and I'm a painter. Today we're going to paint this nice little scene right here from Galveston, Texas, from their lighthouse there. My family and I were just there. It was very interesting. You notice that the top portion of the lighthouse is actually missing, and that is because they are doing a restoration of the entire lighthouse, and they've taken the top portion off, which is called the lantern room, and they are restoring it, and they will restore it at some point at the top. Currently, they have a big light up star at the top of it, and it looks kind of like a big Christmas tree at night. So it's very interesting. So we're going to paint this today, so let's do this. Here are the materials for today. If you're feeling adventurous, give it a screenshot, or it's listed in the description for you. I'm going to start out by using masking fluid to mask off the white houses and the white star at the top of the lighthouse. I do that by using an old brush, a cheap one that I don't care about, and dipping it into a mixture of water and Dawn liquid dish soap before I dip it into the masking fluid. That protects your brushes, but you want to make sure and wash it directly when you're finished, because it only offers so much protection. I'm going to start out with the sky, so I'm preparing a nice cobalt blue, a very light wash, and we are going to just wet this entire thing first and then apply the cobalt a little darker at the top and a little lighter at the bottom. If you look at the original image here, there are a few clouds at the bottom, but they are kind of clustered around one house, so I'm going to even that out a smidge, and really I'm just using a thirsty brush and I'm lifting out a little bit of that paint that's there, and then I'm adding back in a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna as cloud shadows at the bottom of these little wispy clouds. This is really just meant to be a very subtle effect. You could even leave them out if you want to. I'm going to mix up my greens, so I'm starting out with Sap Green and I'm adding in some burnt umber. We're going to use that for a lot of the grasses and things like that. And then I'm taking Sap Green and I am going to mix it with Ultramarine Blue for a darker, more cool mixture. I've allowed my sky to dry completely, and now I'm coming back in with a very light wash of my lighter green for this distant vegetation here. Very, very light, and now I'm using my darker green to go along the bottom for just a tiny little bit of shadow, and that should do it for this area. I'm going to let that dry. Allowed all that to dry, and now I'm moving forward into the middle distance. I'm lining the top of this grassy area with yellow ochre, and then I'm going to come back in with my lighter green, but only a little bit darker than the background, and I'm adding that in, and then I'll come back in also with my darker green and add a little bit of shadow at the bottom of the vegetation as well. So one interesting fact about this lighthouse is it used to actually be striped in black and white paint, but eventually it weathered away and now it looks all black, and that causes some people to call it the ghost lighthouse. And in fact, some people say that the lighthouse itself is haunted, although I didn't see any evidence of that myself. What was that? Alright, so I admit, in this instance, I'm actually going to idealize the water here, just for fun. It was not this blue in person, it was pretty brown, but I mean, the sky can reflect in water, so I really just started out with some cobalt blue, then I'm adding in some of my green, and now I'm adding in a mixture of ultramarine blue and burnt sienna for the area underneath the lighthouse and for the reflections of those kind of things. I'm going to go ahead and show you that mixture really quick. So I'm starting out with French Ultramarine Blue, then I'm adding in some burnt sienna. I'm actually going to mix that twice, but the top one I'm mixing a little bit warmer, and the bottom one I'm mixing cooler, so it's a little bit closer to gray. And then I'm going to add quite a bit of water so that it's very light. I'm going to go ahead and use that warmer mixture for a nice light wash on the whole lighthouse. And then I'm going to come back in with some burnt sienna to add a little bit of rust texture to this. And then a darker mixture of my black mixture on the right side here for shadow. And you can see I got out of alignment. It's not straight. I apparently cannot, for the life of me, paint in a straight line. So I'm going to have to come back and fix that after it's dry. Now I'm using that cooler mixture of my grays for the roofs of the houses. And all three of these houses have the same roof. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill them all in. I've allowed the lighthouse to dry completely, and now I'm going to come back in and I'm going to fix my place where I colored out of the lines. So I've got my nice little chisel brush and I've wet that, and now I'm running that little brush along the edge of this over the bumpy parts that are out of alignment, and I'm just dabbing that out and taking some of the color out. Now I flipped it over and then flipped it back, trying to get the best angles to make sure that it's straight, and I think I just got away with it. It doesn't look bumpy anymore. I mean, nobody wants a bumpy lighthouse. Enough time has passed where the water is also dry, so I'm using some yellow ochre and placing that along the top of the vegetation here, and then I'm coming back with my lighter green. And then after that, I'm going to come back in with some of my darker green and add some shadows and some differentiations between these two kind of hill looking things. To add some more texture here, I'm taking a palette knife and I am scraping lines, basically just the form of the grass. I'm scraping that in, and the paint is going to settle into those lines and it's going to create dark lines in some places, and in other places the paint will be scraped off and it'll make lighter lines. Time to remove that masking fluid. I like to use a rubber cement eraser. It gets the job done quick. The front of the houses are what's in shadow here, as the light is coming from the left. So I'm using a watered down version of my gray here, and I'm just painting the entire fronts of the houses. You would expect the railing that goes beyond the house to be white because the house is white, but actually since it's in shadow, it's darker than the sky. So you want to use that gray. Let's grab some burnt sienna for a little bit of chimney action here. So I'm just going to use that to paint in the chimneys, and then I'll come back with burnt umber for the front of it that's in shadow later. I'm using a very small brush to add in some more grassy details here, using it for some brush strokes. Using my dark gray mix for some of the supports for the houses and the shadows underneath there. Some of you may be wondering what the actual name of the lighthouse is, and it is actually the Point Bolivar Lighthouse. It's actually the second lighthouse that was built on that site, as the first one was pulled down in the Civil War. But this one was built in 1872, and it served its purpose until about 1933. And there were two major hurricanes, one in 1900 and one in 1915, that actually caused the townspeople to come and shelter themselves inside the lighthouse, and it saved hundreds of people. I'm using a thick mixture of my dark gray here, and I'm going to just go ahead and dry brush some darker texture on the side of this. It looks like it's maybe made out of rusty metal, maybe some iron or something like that. So I'm just adding in some of that texture, turning my brush on its side, and I am raking it down the hills of the paper. Well, we've got to add all those beautiful palm trees, so I'm going to start out with the trunks. I'm just going to use my same color of dark gray for that, because since they're so far away and in silhouette, you can't really tell that they're brown anyway. So I've added in the trunks, and now I'm coming back in with my bluer green mixture here, and I'm using a number 4 brush, and I'm just adding in all of these little palm fronds here. Then I'm using my dark gray mixture to add in some shadow. This lighthouse does have a lot of interesting history. Like for instance, in 1917, soldiers at a nearby fort accidentally shelled the lighthouse during target practice in a dense fog. I'm sure that was quite the surprise for the lighthouse keeper. Just adding more details here and there, railings, windows, all that kind of stuff. Adding in some ripples on the water, and I'm really just using my gray mixture for all of that. I've allowed all of that to dry, and now I've got a nice light green pastel pencil. I'm adding some detail into the grass. I've got a nice light yellow one. I'm adding in some highlights to the palm trees and to the grass. Now I have a 0.7mm Posca pen in white. I'm adding some of the railings, some detail on the houses, adding the detail on the star at the top. Just the absolute finishing touches here. And here's the finished product with all the tape removed and everything's dry and finished. And there you have it, a nice little temporary decoration on top of a lighthouse. I think it'll look great once they restore it. I'd like to go back and see it again. But anyways, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, all of that fun stuff, because that's how this channel gets to grow. Thanks for watching. I will see you again in 2 weeks.